And on that note, I think it's time we can go live. It's about 5 minutes to 1. The usual suspects are here. Thanks for checking in, guys. JP, Dixie, Matthew, Try Fingers, 90 knots. 90 knots informs us, biked 15 and walked 4 miles this morning, but it's too hot now. And of course, Daniel wants to know, do I have enough Gatorade? I've got one. I ran this morning, but I didn't run. I only ran 5. So only 5. The Detroit Free Press Marathon got canceled. And so normally I'd be putting in more long runs. And I hate to say this, but I've gotten a little lazy. And so, so I'll run a few long runs this year, but I probably won't run a full marathon until next year. Andrew Allen, hi, diddly ho, neighborino. Hey, thanks for checking in, my friend. And by the way, we've got the Simpsons money right here. I decided to put that back there along with all the rest of the money. Got that going for us. And Stephen Willis is checking in from Australia. Thank you for checking in, my friend. I appreciate that. I've got friends in Australia. In fact, I did a call into my friend Chris Goodsell's morning show the other day. He does a show on cars. And I do a call with him once a month where I talk about the American auto industry. So we did that. Hey, Dwayne Buck checking in from Spokane. And I know how to say that correctly. Even though it looks like Spokane, apparently it is Spokane. G. Keyman 565. Have a happy Sunday from the Thumb of Michigan. Where, my friend? I must know from where. I know all of the towns in the Thumb. I recognize them because, of course, I worked up there in Bad Axe, Michigan. Someone sent me a note, by the way, and said, hey, Steve, just so you know how small the world is, I understand that you worked in Bad Axe for a couple of years. And he goes, I live in New York, and I've got ancestors who were in New York and decided to try their hand at farming. So they went to a little town called Bad Axe, Michigan in the early 1900s, spent a few years there and it didn't work out. They moved back. They moved back to New York and they became professionals of various sorts. So Scooter checking in from the roof. Hey, wherever you might be, feel free to check in. That's the wonderful thing about the internet and so on. You know, back when I worked in radio, people would call in, but I was on the radio before cell phones were common. In fact, they had just started putting in car phones that cost a fortune right around the time I got out of radio. And so it was, people were calling, you ask them from where and they name a town. They would never say like, oh, I'm in my car, I'm on my roof, I'm in my shed, I'm in my Unabomber style shack. They wouldn't say things like that. Oh, gee, Keyman 565 from Mayville. Yeah, I know where that is. Thank you for checking in. I love the Thumb. When I was working there, I wasn't a terribly big fan of it because I didn't know it that well and I was young and I wasn't making as much money as I would have liked. So Daniel Kester says, hey, Steve, nice share on your Facebook with your Viper. Yeah, and I've told you before, if you are friends with me here, you should be friends with me on Facebook. Basically, all I do is I post updates about the channel and then occasionally I post photographs of my car. And the Woodward Dream Cruise is a week from yesterday, but it was officially canceled. But it's not really an official thing in that you can cancel the corporate sponsorships, but you can't cancel people showing up on Woodward with their cars. So everyone is still going to show up. I'm going to show up. So I broke out the turtle wax yesterday. I am an old school wax on, wax off kind of guy. And so I broke out some turtle wax yesterday and I waxed the Viper, getting it ready for the Dream Cruise. Hope the weather holds. That is a week from yesterday. Like I said, Living Soul Quickening Spirit, Roseville, Michigan, USA, checking in here. Thank you, sir, for checking in. Assuming that's a surname, I realize it could be a ma'am, so thank you for checking in. And I, of course, know where Roseville is. I spent a lot of time over there in Macomb County, or Macomb County, as it's actually called. Richard R. checking in from Minneapolis. 108 GK, is there a Petoskey stone on your shelf? No, there's not. Petoskey is a state rock of Michigan. It's also the name of a town called Petoskey. And I've had Petoskey's, but I don't think I've got one right now. In fact, I was just digging through a box the other day and I found an old BlackBerry, which I saved because I thought it was cool when I had it. And then I also found a chunk of copper I found just walking around one day up north. So I meant to bring it in and show it to you, but I'll bring it in next week. Adam Bomb says he's listening on my drive back from moving my sister out of hell/New York City on our way back to Michigan, loving the scenery in Pennsylvania. Oh, so you're doing the route down and around, which I assume you've got to do Usually from New York City to Michigan, you cut through Canada, but nowadays they watch that border like a hawk. So Gordon Waite, hello from Michigander, who fled the state after the big blizzard in 78, never to return and never to live in the North again after 1980. And I'm here to tell you, my friend, I remember that blizzard. I was in high school, but I had a paper route. And what happened was Michigan gets a lot of snow. And in a bad winter, we can get a lot of snow. And the lower part of the state is one thing. Upper Peninsula is another thing altogether. But lower Michigan, and occasionally you might get 6 inches, 8 inches. That's a rough time to get 8 inches of snow. And in 1978, in one particular 2-day period, a storm came over us and then reversed direction and came back over us. And I remember reading about that later. I actually looked it up. You can find articles on the internet about the storm of 1978 that hit Michigan. It's one of the worst snowfalls in Michigan history in terms of depth, if you consider more bad, which most people do. And it was a nightmare. I mean, it shut everything down because they couldn't plow it off the roads. It piled back up again, plow it off. Now it starts filling up parking lots. I mean, it was basically they told everyone, stay home, everyone. And of course, I'm out there walking through waist deep snow trying to deliver newspapers. And at that time, my paper route, I think, was the one that was 1.5 miles from my house. So JP delivered the papers in Canada, and he had plenty of snow up there, of course. So there you go. The Fuse Man, I sent a t-shirt to another live stream host I follow. He gave away my support without a single on-air display. Here's the thing. If you send me a t-shirt, this is donated, I'll wear it on camera as long as it's not obscene or terribly political. I've got 2 or 3 shirts right now that I've not yet worn on camera. I run everything through the wash one time just to get the wrinkles and folds out of it. I've got 2 or 3 lined up, but and I've had people tell me, they go, Steve, I sent you a shirt, you never wore it. And I go and I look and I did. They just missed it. So I'm cranking out so many videos that you might miss it. So there are some shirts that are on air more often than others, but generally speaking, I can tell you, I rotate the shirts through. I've mentioned before, right behind the camera, I've got 2 garment racks that have, I think, about 150 shirts on there. And so I take them off the right end and put them on the left end, and they just work their way through. And sometimes I'll skip a shirt, or sometimes I'll move a shirt around. But generally speaking, a shirt will get worn a few times on camera before I retire it. So if you sent me a shirt and you didn't see it, please feel free to tell me, and I'll let you know. Robert Hodgins says, "Are you really Steve Leto?" I am one of the Steve Letos. And by the way, I had several people, and by the way, Mark, I got to talk to you about something in a second. I had several people ask me, what did I mean by Letos? L-E-H-T-O-S. That's plural of Leto. And a lot of people mistakenly put an apostrophe S to make a plural out of a proper name. But the Smiths, for instance, isn't S-M-I-T-H apostrophe S unless you're referring to the house owned by someone named Smith. That would be Smith's house. But a group of Smiths, or the group Smiths, is just S-M-I-T-H-S. So plural of Leto would be Letos. No apostrophe. So there you go. Mark Heil, I believe, Mark, you may have sent me a magnet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you did. And I used it the other day doing some work around the house. A lot of nails got in the lawn. And I could have broken my metal detector out. And of course, I would detect it and then have to pick it up. Or I could just walk over it with the magnet. And that was fun. So I'm going to take it magnet fishing as soon as I can. But I would just walk down and go, I mean, you hear it picking up. And I mean, it was insane. And the funny thing is the magnet was so powerful that I'm holding it over the garbage can and I'm having a hard time getting the nails off of it to drop into the garbage can. So that was a lot of fun. I went magnet fishing in my yard, but soon I hope to go magnet fishing in a river or a lake. Dr. Kaufman, Steve, what are your thoughts on the checkpoints inland, away from the border, like in Mexico and USA, far away from the actual border? I've talked about this before. The immigration people feel, the border people feel they've got the right to check inland as much as like 200 miles or something. And by that definition, like the entire state of Michigan is technically within the border protection area. And so I have an issue with that because it just seems to me like they're just, pushing their jurisdiction further and further and further out. And it makes me wonder about that. So, Daniel Player points out that Oleto backwards is Othello. That's pretty good. If you are into palindromes, which is the words that spelled backwards or forward, or sentences like, a man, a plan, a canal. Panama is a palindrome. So is the sentence, Satan, oscillate my metallic sonatas. And it's such an odd one. And you think to yourself, does that really work? Trust me, spell it out. It works. So Satan, oscillate my metallic sonatas works. Jesse Lee Peterson, why aren't you in church? Well, it's 1:00 my time, and good church going people do it in the mornings. So church is Sunday morning. That's church time, my friends. Matthew Showstrom, did you ever get the Make Tea Not War t-shirt? That one's not ringing a bell, but it's faint. I'm not sure. I'll have to think about that. Several people are now saying this is church. Duncan Campbell, hello from Melbourne, Australia. Sorry I'm late. Hey, you're 6 minutes late. Nothing, no problem. Anytime. I'm happy to have anybody show up anytime. Donald Norby checking in from Lake Wedowee, Alabama. Hey, Steve, are you selling our info? I don't have your info to sell. I wouldn't if I could, but I can't. Dan DeClerc asks a question, what about Grosse Pointe wanting to pass a law disallowing people from anchoring offshore? And I think you or someone sent me an article on that, and I meant to do a story, and I just got buried. And James Reese is checking in from Cincinnati and reminding me of the pronunciation. Thank you very much, because he did it before I asked him to. But you know that in many places like Michigan, the lake falls under the jurisdiction of either the state or the feds, depending on what you're doing and where you are. But the water in the lake is the lake, and then there's a shore, right? And I've known people beachfront property who find it very annoying that people in boats will bring their boat into, like, say, 6 feet of water and drop an anchor, and then sit there in 6 feet of water and just party all afternoon. But of course, they're legally allowed to do that because they're on navigable water, and that water is not owned by the person who owns that property right there. Now, I've known people who said they specifically lived on beachfront property, and the people on the boat, when they had to do something on land, like relieve themselves, would then come ashore and do that on their property. And that, of course, would be wrong. But if they're simply staying out there in the boat, that's within their rights to do so. So can a city pass a law saying you cannot anchor offshore of our city? And of course they can't. So what happens is a lot of municipalities will pass stupid laws. Some states will, and even the Fed does from time to time, knowing that the law would not withstand what we call scrutiny, meaning you run it before a court, and the court's going to say, that one's no good. So Mike Garrett says there are word palindromes. And Mike, I thought of you yesterday. I watched a horse race, and a horse called Tis the Law won the race. I was wondering if you have been following horse racing at all or not. Horse racing, like everything else, is weird because they're doing stuff with no audience. I'm not normally a huge horse racing fan, but I watch from time to time. And if there's a Triple Crown contender going into the third race, I'll watch that because I'm fascinated by that concept. But I was watching the horse race yesterday, and it was a very exciting race. And of course, the grandstands are empty, and the owners are standing around wearing masks, and they were interviewing somebody, and the interviewer was wearing a mask, and their subject was like 15 feet away, and then there was a microphone guy with a microphone doing this back and forth between the two of them who were social distancing. So these are the times in which we live. So Living Soul, Quickening Spirit, what do you think about the future of the value of the U.S. dollar? I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not an economist. I know that we're heading into some very, very rough economic times and don't know what's going to happen with our money in the near future. I know that silver is up right now. Gold is up right now. And those are often indications of problems with inflation or people losing faith in either the dollar or our stock markets, for instance. So, make sure I didn't miss one here. Mike Garrett's when a horse wears a mask, it's called a sleazy. I saw an ad on Facebook for horse masks, the masks that you'd put on a horse to keep mosquitoes away from it. But I don't recall any unusual outfits the horses were wearing yesterday. So, Steve asks, do you own any silver and gold? A tiny little bit. I own some coins. But I mean, I'm not heavily invested in gold and silver. I'm not stockpiling the stuff for the end times or anything like that. But, the interesting thing about gold and silver is occasionally you get spikes, but it can be really, really steady for a long, long period of time. So just be careful not to buy it when it's at the peak, because then if it drops, it might be there for a long period of time. Jay Paul says, hey, Steve, you do know when you magnet fish, you don't use a rod. Well, I was also hoping to remember that you need to use a rope, so you don't just throw the magnet in the water and wait for something to happen. You got to have a rope so you can pull it back. Oh, Crazy Tech and Puppets. Did you know that drones are banned in West Bloomfield parks? Yeah, that's an interesting question because Genesee County tried to ban drones in their parks, and they got struck down by a court here in Genesee County, here in Michigan. And so the Genesee County court obviously wouldn't be binding precedent on anybody else, but you think it'd be pretty indicative of what's going to happen when someone takes that to court. So I think they pass rules like that, hoping that they can enforce them, but they probably can't. The FAA has passed rules specifically on what their jurisdiction is and what they can control, and they've specifically said that localities cannot override their jurisdiction. So Matthew Shostrom says that the hoard of toilet paper will be more valuable than gold or silver in the apocalypse. I wonder about that. The problem, of course, is toilet paper is something you actually use. You can't stockpile it, just hang on. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but it takes up a lot of space. Plus, you do use it from time to time. Crazy Tech and Puppets says, yeah, FAA and the state have jurisdiction. So it's been a little while since I read that opinion, but Captain Kipper answered a question somebody else asked about whether or not you need a license to go magnet fishing. And of course you do not, because there's no limit on magnets. And of course you're not dealing with anything live. You're not catching fish, which is what the DNR and other people who issue the licenses are trying to track. I understand that you could catch a live grenade, for instance, or something like that. You'd want to avoid that if you could, but that does happen from time to time as well. Gordon Waits, did they ever remove the old Silverdome Stadium? Yes. I drove by it last week, and the Silverdome was built in the mid-1970s in Pontiac, Michigan. They called it the Silverdome because they originally had called it the Pontiac Stadium, and nobody knew. They're like, well, what happens if it rains? And they're like, well, it's got a dome over it. And everything else was the, Astrodome or this dome or that dome. So they said, okay, we'll call it the Silverdome because the roof was silverish. And the Silverdome was used by the Detroit Lions, and also the Detroit Pistons for a while played there. And it was a huge venue for a basketball team. At one point in time, the Pistons had several attendance records because they were playing in such a huge venue. The Pistons eventually moved out to the Palace. The Detroit Lions eventually moved downtown. And the Silverdome fell into disrepair. A couple different people made plays to try to buy it, possibly work out something with it. And it got to the point where they stopped and they imploded it. And they've now been leveling the whole site, removing stuff. And I think they're going to put in some kind of industrial park there. But its last famous use was the parking lots of the Silverdome were being used to store all of those VW diesels that were cheating. They were being bought up by the thousands. And they were using it simply as a holding pen for all these vehicles. I went by there one time with a camera and took some pictures. They didn't look as impressive as I hoped, so I never did anything with them. But Bob Blah Blah says, hey, Steve, tell us the pony in the street story. And I'm trying to remember where, is the photograph on Facebook maybe? A while back, this is over a year ago, I think, I was sitting in my living room one morning, and I look out in the front yard, do kind of a double take, and there's just a pony walking by, just a pony. And I'm like, wait a second. Why is there a pony walking by? A few minutes later, I see a couple cops show up. So I put on my shoes, I walk outside, and sure enough, there is a pony and 2 cops. As I walk down the end of my driveway, one of the police officers goes, hey, is this your pony? And I go, no, I don't have a pony. And he goes, oh, do you know whose it is? And I said, no. In fact, I looked around and I did not remember seeing anybody in the neighborhood who had a pony. I don't live in the kind of place where ponies are that common. But I started thinking and going, you know something, when I go mountain biking or running, I often run past a spot a mile or 2 away that's got horses. Maybe it's from there. And then I realized that these police officers were from a different jurisdiction. And I go, wait. What are you guys doing here? And the guy goes, well, the pony was actually way over there. He goes, we've been kind of following it because we can't get it in our car. We don't want to mess with it because it's a big animal. He goes, so what we're going to do is we made some phone calls. We're hoping somebody can figure out where this pony came from. I just realized I've got video. There's the pony. There we go. And yeah, he's got an itch, so he's scratching. So anyways, that was the pony. So anyways, the cops go, well, we've been following this entire time. And he goes, so we've put a call in. We've made a bunch of calls. We can't figure out where. So we've actually called a local veterinarian. And the vet then made some phone calls and found a local person who had a horse trailer and understood horses. And so this guy came out, walked over, led the pony onto a little trailer and took him away. And so I assume that he got back to his rightful owners. But yeah, so I actually walked over. A very, very friendly little pony. But the problem is they don't talk. They won't tell you where they live. So, yeah, and don't forget, there's a whole episode of Seinfeld about ponies where Elaine accidentally says in front of a bunch of strangers that anybody who owns a pony has got to be kind of like, and this little old lady goes, I had a pony. I loved that pony. She didn't realize that she'd insulted this woman. Oh, boy. Yeah, Captain Kipper says the pony was exercising his right to remain silent. And Mike, by the way, Mike, since you're a horse guy, I got to tell you, I was mountain biking about a mile away, and I passed a place where I saw a horse or pony that looked like that one. And I saw a woman in the yard, and I said, excuse me. I said, I got to ask. I go, did your pony get loose the other day? And she goes, yes. Why? How do you know? And I said, well, I was there. And she goes, what do you mean? And she goes, oh, no. She goes, my horse got loose the other day, but not up there. She goes, I came and got it. It was out in the front yard. And I said, well, it looks, and I showed her the photograph. She goes, very close, but not quite. So we went over to her pony, and I compared mugshots, and it wasn't the same pony. Very close, but not quite. So I, to this day, do not know where the pony came from. So, yeah, Cyberdoc, little old Polish lady with a pony as a child. Herbert Rushlau, do you still have that $100 bill, Rushlau? Yes, I do. In fact, it's on the set. I moved it from the thumbnail. So in the thumbnail, it was over here in a very obvious spot. Too many people spotted it. I moved it to a little less obvious of a spot. Mark Heil, a pony with no name. Yeah, this doesn't rhyme, though, does it? Robert Odell, the pony was simply traveling. Well, and that's the interesting thing. If you were riding that pony, would you need a license? So, Cyberdoc says I should try the gravity experiment where I put the 100 on the dash and say you can have it if you catch it before it hits the floor, and then you can't reach for it until I stomp on the accelerator. Problem is that the way my Viper accelerates, that Windows, the $100 bill is going to slam against the back, slam into the back. Let's go right over their head. Wild Bill 57 points out that horses and ponies are fun until you have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and shovel the stables. Yeah, I've known people who took care of horses and took care of ponies. And, you know, if you love animals, I mean, I haven't ridden a horse. I've ridden a horse a couple times as an adult, but not many times. I love horseback riding, but not so much that I should go out and seek it out and do it. But I have. I love animals. So I love horses. I love ponies. And the weird part about it is, though, is that obviously owning one and taking care of it on a daily basis is a much, much bigger deal. It's kind of like I have to explain to a kid, if you get a puppy, the whole family gets a puppy. And the puppy becomes a dog. And 10 years from now, are you still going to be taking care of your puppy? And you have to have that talk with them. And so the care and maintenance on a horse is obviously elevated because they're complex, big animals. But I love horses. I love horses. So it's and I said I've known people. I actually knew a woman whose daughter loved horses, and she took riding lessons, and she spent time at horse places and horse events, and she got a job working for other people who owned horses. So she would go and ride their horses for them, or groom their horses for them, or sometimes clean up after their horses for them. And that allowed her to mix the two things. She got to enjoy the horse without having to do all the work. Kind of like a grandparent with a grandchild, right? They get to enjoy the kid for a little while, then they get to go home. So Matthew Shostrom reminds us that there was a kangaroo incident in Florida where a kangaroo was found out hopping around, and they found the owner, but then of course they found out that the owner wasn't in a town that allowed exotic pets. And there's some debate about where the kangaroo is going to go. But, that's a little more exotic and stranger than finding a pony in your front yard in Michigan. Daniel Kester, have you reached 10,000 miles on the Viper yet? No. In fact, I rolled it over to 7,100 miles, 7,100 miles 2 days ago. So now it won't hit 10,000 by the end of the year. It might hit 8, but that's a stretch. We'll see. The Fuse Man, have you learned to reach the correct way for the Viper seatbelt? No. The Viper seatbelt starts here and goes in down here. And I get in every single time and do this. And I'll never get used to it. So, Daniel Player says, my wife is a cat person. I'm a dog person. So as a compromise, we now have 2 cats named Rover and Fido. That's good. That's good. I know a woman, very, very dear friend of mine, who's an attorney in California, named Karen. And she got married. And her and her husband were discussing children. Very, very modern couple. We're going to discuss children. They're not just going to happen. We're going to discuss it. And Karen said, I would like to have 2 children. And the husband said, I think we should have 1. Karen said 2. James said 1. She had twins. So I guess that's how you win that argument. Daniel Kester, one of the worst things you can do to a car's engine is to let it sit. Oh, yeah, of course. I agree with you. And also emotionally. You just letting a car sit is just a shame. It's like if you had a dog and you kept it indoors all the time. I mean, dogs want to go outside and run around and play. Your car wants to go out and run around and play. That's what it's built for. And so when you walk up to a car and you look at it, yes, you can enjoy it looking at it, but it's a machine to do something. It's a tool that's been built to do something. It's designed to do something. And when it's sitting there, it's not doing it. Okay? So part of a car's existence is its appearance. That's only a part of it. part of it is its function, what it does. So you got to take it out and drive it. I know guys who own Tuckers. There's only 47 of them left in the world. Each and every one of them is worth a boatload of money. And the guys I know who own them drive them. They don't drive them that often, but they do drive them. And there's other people who, get it, stick it in a museum, or put it in their garage and just never touch it. And if you own it, you can do whatever you want with it. But to me, that's a shame, So Matthew Shostrom points out 9,000 followers until your next milestone. That is correct, my friend. I am currently, as of, and I'll give you the exact count, as of right now, 3, 2, 1, I've got 141,359 subscribers, and I appreciate each and every one of them. I'm still blown away by those numbers. Somebody said, Steve, think about the University of Michigan Big House, the stadium where they play football. I think it seats like 110,000. He goes, you're past that. You couldn't fit your audience, all the subscribers, into that building. I'm like, wow, that is a lot. Blah, blah, blah. Have you metal detected your backyard yet? Yes, I have. Haven't found much. Still looking. I don't detect my own yards with the same fervency that I do in a other place, because I know the yard's not going anyplace. No one else is detecting it. But the last couple of yards I've had, I haven't found much. So, the weird thing is, you think an old house might have a lot of stuff in the old yard. And I've owned houses that were old and found almost nothing in the yards. But it has to do with how many kids played there, how many adults ran around changing their pockets and so on. So, there might be more stuff. Also, an old house, if the yard's been redone, like if they put sod in or fill dirt, then all bets are off. So there you go. Living Soul Quickening Spirit. I'm thinking of buying a metal detector. What is a good metal detector to buy? I personally like White's Electronics, although the company might be going out of business shortly. I know they're going to stop manufacturing. I'm just not sure they're going to go completely out or not. But I've used their stuff for years. I love it. It's great. But modern metal detector technology is so good that there's several companies. Garrett is another company. Fisher is another company. And go online, do some research, go onto YouTube, look up guys who've got metal detectors, and you'll discover that any of those machines is a good machine, but you get what you pay for. You can buy a $100 beginner machine that a child would use, and you might find stuff in a sandbox or at the beach, but you're going to be digging a lot of garbage. Ideally, if you've got the money, you want to get one that not only does the discrimination between good targets and ferrous targets, which are iron targets, but also one that can give you more data and information on it. So my V3i, or even my previous DFX, it'll tell you that underneath your coil right now, that is a penny, or that is a dime, or that is a quarter. And you get good to the point where you'll have a confidence level approaching 100%. I've been places, and just to mess with people, I tell people, here's what I'm about to dig up, and I tell them. The only thing I can't tell you is the date of the coin. So, Dr. Kaufman, are you a gun owner or aficionado or collector, perhaps? I am not. No, I'm not. And I've got nothing against them or for them. I just never, when I was a child, I had a Crossman 760, but just never have. So, Captain Kipper mentions Mine Lab, but they're expensive. They're also Australian. No offense. But in America, they cost a lot of money. And that's one of the reasons why. So Mine Lab is often mentioned by people in the same breath as White's in terms of being top of the line, along with Garrett and Fisher. Mine Lab makes a lot of detectors that are aimed more towards prospecting. If you were going to go out west and look for nuggets, gold nuggets and so on exclusively, I would point you to Mine Lab. If you're going to do coin shooting or coin hunting like I do, looking for coins and other things that people drop, I personally like the White's detectors myself. So Don C says, I found a 1914 Barber diamond 10 inches with my 17-inch coil on my CTX 3030. That's a Mine Lab, right? That's good depth, by the way. Most coins in Michigan don't get that deep. I've gone detecting in Michigan, and the deepest coins I've found are usually 8, 9, 10 inches, depending on the location. I've had some unusual spots. I once came by a place in Pontiac, Michigan, where there's a guy with a bulldozer scraping a lot. He was literally bulldozing, and the day before, there was like just scrub brush with garbage, and he scraped it down, and it was black dirt, meaning that he hadn't gotten down to the clay layer yet. And so I walked over and I said, excuse me, I go, I have a metal detector. Is it okay if I detect over here? And the guy goes, no. He goes, we're putting in a parking lot. He goes, do whatever you want. I found 3 large cents within 10 feet of each other. That's the penny that's this big, and they're from the 1830s and 1840s. The same site, I found a barber dime, I found a mercury dime over towards the edge, found a bunch of really cool stuff from an old farmhouse, silverware, horseshoes, things like that. But the 3 large pennies I found within 10 feet of each other. And I figured out that the guy had scraped off about 10 inches of topsoil. And so they were actually within the top inch, they were about 11 inches down the day before. I might have been able to find them if I could have gotten my coil over the dirt, but I probably couldn't because there was so much junk growing out of that stuff. So metal detecting is a fascinating hobby. Blah, blah, blah. Didn't White file bankruptcy? I did not hear about bankruptcy. I simply heard that they had stopped manufacturing, although it wouldn't surprise me. And I know that among other things, they said that they're being knocked off in another country. There are Chinese metal detectors hitting the market that were basically just apparently using all of their patented technology and trying to get into a patent fight with somebody in another country in America. It's a nightmare, and no one's got that kind of money. Mark Heil says, I hear women are attracted to dudes with metal detectors wearing dress socks and shorts, especially at the beach. I have to tell you, when I go metal detecting, I'm usually wearing gloves. I put one knee pad on one knee so I can kneel and dig quickly. And I'm carrying in my left hand my pin pointer like this and my digging tool handle here, so I can carry both those in one hand. I'm swinging the detector with the other. And invariably, your hands get dirty. And you also get dirt on your knees. And I've seen people recoil in horror when they see me. They're like, because they don't look at like, clean shaven, combed hair. I got my teeth. No. The guy's got dirty hands and dirt on his knees, and he's digging in the dirt, and little kids will often come over, and they'll come over. Hey, have you found anything? And it's funny because little kids understand it, and so some adults get it too, but it's primarily the little kids that go, "Oh, what'd you find?" And I pull up, show them all the coins I found, So Don C. Aqua Chigger inspired me to start. Yeah, there's a bunch of great YouTube channels for guys who go metal detecting. So, and I know people who say, is there anything out there still? Like, hasn't all been found? Because metal detectors came out in the 1960s. And so, like, all the parks have been hit, right? I can tell you right now, I've been to a city park in a little town in Michigan where I found a little section that was hot, meaning that every time I went there, I found something. I kept reworking the same section. I literally go this way one time, this way another time. I found Indian head pennies and mercury dimes every single time I went there. So one day I'm metal detecting, and a guy pulls up, parks his car, makes a big show of it, and comes walking over to me. He goes, find anything? I go, yeah. And he goes, well, my name is, he tells me his name. And he goes, I just want you to know, because I live here in town. He goes, me and a group of guys have been metal detecting this town for years. He goes, we stopped detecting this park. He goes, we cleaned it out. It's done. And he goes, but I noticed you came back. He goes, I've seen you here a couple of times. Why are you here? I go, I keep finding stuff. And he goes, you do not. Like that. And I go, yes, I do. And he goes, really? While we were talking, I got a signal. I go, what kind of detector do you have? He goes, it's whites. I goes, DFX? He goes, yeah. I go, do you recognize that sound? And I swung it again. He goes, that's a silver dime. I go, yes, it is. I go, want to know how deep it is? And I hit the pinpointer and I go, it's 5 inches down. I go, how much you want to bet that's a mercury? And he goes, no way. So I pull out the digging tool, cut a half circle, pop it, boom, out falls a mercury dime. The guy was standing there telling me the park was cleaned out by him and his buddies. They'd gotten everything. And while I was talking to him, I found a mercury dime. So we became friends, by the way, and he and I went detecting a whole bunch of times together. Matthew Shostrom, would you rather have to work in domestic violence or divorces? Neither. That's the beauty of practicing law, is if you can find a field you enjoy, you can avoid the fields that scare you. And doing divorce work or domestic violence work or criminal cases, prosecuting them or defending them, it would intrigue me on some level, but I know I wouldn't enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, I'm not going to do it if I can avoid doing it and do something else. So Mike Gerritsen, that is why I don't listen to anybody. Yeah, well, there's something to be said for that. And when I meet young people in particular, try to explain to them that when someone tells you something, you have more than one choice. You don't have to either believe or disbelieve what they tell you immediately. You can take what they tell you and stick it on a shelf and think about it. And so when someone tells you something and they say something like, I don't know, Gatorade is made in Georgia, okay? I don't know, one way or the other. I don't know. You take that little factoid and stick it on the side of your head, and you leave it there. If it ever becomes important, you do the research and find out on your own. And you also look at the person who's talking to you and ask yourself, is this a person of authority? So if you ask me a legal question and said, Steve, regarding Michigan's lemon law, does it cover motorcycles? Yes or no? When I tell you no, you can take that to the bank all day long. Now, if you want to, put it aside and then go look it up yourself. You'll find out I was right. And as you go through life, that becomes more and more important because you'll meet people who just tell you stuff. And I've met people and they tell me something, they tell me something and I go, says who? And then they go, oh, I heard it from this guy. So now I don't have to believe this person. I got to believe this guy. Think about that. And so anytime you get information from anybody, consider the source. And so when this guy walks up to me and goes, Steve, this park is cleaned out. Number one, as Don pointed out, nothing's ever cleaned out. But number two, I knew from personal experience it wasn't, because every time I came there, I found something. So when he walked up and said, dude, this park is cleaned out, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, what an idiot. Because he stopped hunting here and left me all this stuff I found. And I had found in that park a standing Liberty quarter, a Barbara quarter, probably 50 Indian head pennies, and probably 25 mercury dimes. And that's not counting the silver Roosevelts I found. That's not counting, I found jewelry there. It was all in one hot little corner. And I actually know why it happened. I never told him why it happened, but it would be too esoteric to get into here. But the point is that he walked up and goes, there's nothing here. You shouldn't be hunting here. And there was. But I also knew he was wrong from personal experience. So number one, consider the source. But number two, understand you don't have to believe it just because someone told it to you. You don't have to disbelieve it or believe it. You can make the decision later about how you're going to react to something. So there you go. Sub GR77, did you see the guy in Michigan doing a treasure hunt with pieces from his jewelry store? Yes, I did. And I didn't do a story on it because number one, the guy's looking for free publicity and that's not my business. That's his job. But number two, just like the last one, who knows? He says he did it. I don't know. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Just like everything else in life, put that aside and think about it. Steve, when I was younger, neighborhood kids would state things as not true or as facts. And when asked, they'd say, go ask my dad. That's another problem that children often have, is they tend to believe that adults know everything. And think of all the goofy stuff you were told by teachers in elementary school, middle school, and high school, or junior high, as we called it. I can tell you dumb things that teachers told me. And as an adult, I look back and go, wow, that was stupid. And just because some teacher, graduated high school, took 4 years of college, got a teaching certificate, and is now teaching like 7th grade chemistry or something. Doesn't mean they're an expert on something else. And that's the funniest thing of all, is how often teachers would give you opinions on something that was not in their field of expertise. And now you realize, wait, there's just some 23-year-old guy telling me something. And it's just, I believed it because he's a teacher. So Nathan Miller checking from Berrien Springs, Michigan. Thank you, sir, for checking in. I appreciate that. I love that corner of the state. I need to get out there. Keep saying this. But there is the Main Street Burger in Eau Claire, Michigan. I haven't been there in a couple of years. I might take my Viper out there on a road trip. Visit my friends. I got a bunch of friends out there in Eau Claire. Daniel Kester, it sounds like metal detecting is a bit easier on the back than gold panning. Yes and no. It's harder on the knees because you're standing up, kneeling, standing up, kneeling. Every time you get a signal, you dig. You got to kneel and dig it and stand back up again. And at the end of the day of a long day of metal detecting, your knee will tell you and your back will tell you a little bit also. But I understand what you mean, because gold panners are crouched down there almost the entire time. Michael HG says, you can ask the person, how do I find out if that is true? Because people who really know their stuff are usually happy to point to you to multiple sources. I just read a great story on the internet about Philip Roth, who wrote the novel, The Human Stain. And without getting too much into the story, it was made into a movie, very good movie. Philip Roth was told by somebody, by the way, I think there's a mistake on the Wikipedia entry regarding your novel, The Human Stain. And he went and read the Wikipedia entry, and it claimed that Philip Roth had been inspired by this friend of his, not a friend, but somebody he knew, an acquaintance. And Philip Roth looked and goes, that's not who inspired that. And it was inspired by a story he'd read in the news. So he contacted Wikipedia and said, you guys need to change this. It's obviously wrong. And Wikipedia wrote back to him and said, our rules require us to go off of sources. You're just a single source. We've got 2 sources that say that you were inspired by this other thing. And Philip Roth wrote an open letter to Wikipedia and explained the whole process and said, if I'm not the expert on me, I don't know who is. But then he spelled out everything that did inspire him and every reason why he wasn't inspired by the other guy. The New Yorker ran his letter, and now Philip Roth said it, and the New Yorker said it. So they changed it. But, these things happen. So there you go. Herbert Rushlow, have you ever been to Jenks Park in the Thumb just west of Port Austin? No, I haven't. I've been up in that area quite a bit. Haven't done a lot of metal detecting up there, though. I metal detected some at the old school ground in Bad Axe. The school's been torn down a long time ago, but not up around the Thumb. I don't do a lot of park detecting in state parks. A lot of Michigan state parks don't allow it. And also, I don't do a lot of beach detecting. I know guys who do, but I don't. It's just it's a thing. It's like whether you go fishing in a river or fishing in a lake. It's a slightly different thing. So amateur shooters probably wondering about Johnny Knoxville. I hope Johnny's okay. As do I. Have not heard from Johnny Knoxville in a while. So I'm not quite sure what's become of him. But I might shoot him a note. I think I've got his email someplace. Nicholas Marty, have you ever considered magnet fishing? I mentioned that earlier. Mark, who was with us a few minutes ago, sent me a magnet. And I have it for magnet fishing. It's about yay big. It's powerful. And I mentioned that I broke it out the other day and I used it to clean up some nails in my yard. It did very, very well. But I've never actually gone and dropped it into the water. Canadian Robot Lady has checked in, amateur shooter. She points out Johnny's got a great warm-up act. And Canadian Robot Lady had told me she'd be here. And is that her first appearance? Or did I miss her? I'm always, there we go. She's been here. I start ranting and I miss stuff going by. And then I jump into a conversation halfway through and I'm like, what are you guys talking about? You guys chat amongst yourselves. And by the way, the reason I point over here is that when I'm talking, my camera is up here. My screen is down there. My microphone I just hit is right here. And on the right-hand side of my screen over here is the dialogue box. So Canadian Robot Lady checks and says, good morning, Steve. I appreciate that. Where I am, it's 1:45 in the afternoon. But of course, you're in Canada. So all bets are off, as I like to say. Cyberdoc, do you need a license to magnet fish if you're trolling for vipers? Good luck with that. The Viper's got a fiberglass body, and much of it is aluminum regarding the stuff under the body, like the engine block, and I believe major portions of the frame. So I'm sure there is some iron there, but not as much as you'd expect. The Canadian Robot Lady says she's got a beautiful sunny morning in Canada. See, that's the cool thing about this great world of ours, is it's afternoon here and she's still enjoying her morning. And meanwhile, people in Hawaii, I think, are still in the dark, right? Isn't that how that works? I seem to recall somebody telling me that the Soviet Union at its height was so big and so broad that the sun was rising on a portion of it while it was setting someplace else on a portion of it. And I know people are going to say, but Steve, the Great Britain was the same way. Yeah, but that was scattered all over the globe. Russia is just, one country that happens to cover so many time zones going over, so that's something. Captain Kipper's checking from Fredericton, a town I'm unaware of. I know of the big ones. I actually had lunch the other day with some hockey players. Long story. And I was joking with them about the minor leagues of hockey. And I said, by the way, you guys ever heard of Medicine Hat? So of course you've heard of Medicine Hat, the Medicine Hat Tigers. And I've got a beautiful Medicine Hat Tigers shirt I wear from time to time that says Helm on the back, because a hockey player for the Detroit Red Wings for years had come to the Red Wings by way of Medicine Hat, which I've always just liked the name Medicine Hat. And the beautiful thing about Medicine Hat, of course, is in the movie Youngblood, which is a really, really bad teenage hockey movie. At one point, the coach is yelling at them. If they're not good enough and don't play hard enough, he's going to send them off to Medicine Hat. And the funny thing is that I think that the league they were in was not as good as the league the Medicine Hat is in. But if you're a Hollywood script writer, you want a funny sounding name, not one that's, authentic to hockey. So, Fred Stewart, I just finished your friend Karen's book. Great read, dark, but excellent style in the writing. Thank you very much, Fred. In fact, I put it on the set. My friend Karen Dion wrote a book called The Wicked Sister, and she wrote a book previously called The Marsh King's Daughter. And The Marsh King's Daughter did very, very well, and this one's doing well also. It came out about a week ago. And I shot a video where I talked about this book, and, I've heard from quite a few people who bought it based on my recommendation. I appreciate that. And I'll be honest with you, I've got people who have businesses or endeavors that I don't talk about here, and I would add a book if I believed in it, if I'd read it, and I liked it. And I was joking in that video that the day before, I had someone send me an email, and they said, Steve, we'll pay you if you will plug our product on your show. $235. And I wrote them back and said, no, thank you, but I appreciate the thought. And someone said, 235, what, huh? I don't know what that meant. I have no idea where that number came from. But the point is that what are the odds that they've got a product that I'm going to like? And I always hated it when you're watching some show and somebody breaks form to say, oh, by the way, got to tell you, this widget is our new sponsor. And I've used this widget. This widget's great. It's the best widget I've ever used. My kids like it. The wife likes it. The dogs like it. My neighbor saw me with, I want one of those too. Next thing you know, this widget has become like part of my family. It's changed my life. I urge you to buy this widget, especially because they're sponsoring my show. And you realize it's all made up. So the odds of someone bringing a product to me and saying, Steve, advertise this on your show and we'll pay you. The odds of that being something I would actually want to advertise, It's not going to happen. But when a friend of mine puts out a book, I've known Karen for years. And when she puts out a book and I read it, I'm like, it's a good book. And she sent me an advanced review copy of it back when the Galleys came out, long time ago. And I read it and I actually told her, I said, Karen, I want to do a show talking about your book. And she said, oh, that's very nice of you. You don't have to do that. I said, no, I want to. And I said, I am curious because I've written books too. When should I do this? And she said, well, probably right around the time the book comes out. Because obviously you shoot a video in, June and the book's not available till August. People can't buy the book, then maybe they'll forget about it. So there you go. MB says, if I don't watch Late Tales Law for one day, my day is missing something. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, my friends. Cyberdoc says, haha, no sugar tonight. Are we talking about the Guess Who? TC Boone says, don't like the increased number of YouTube ads now showing up during a video. Often click off the video. And I've got to tell you that's a pet peeve of mine, and I will address it. I'll tell you right now, and I've talked about this a little bit in the past. Here's the problem. About 2 weeks ago, YouTube defaulted all channels to automatically put ads inside the videos so that you're watching a video and an ad will get inserted in the middle of the video. And at first, they said, we're just going to do this, and you have no choice about it. Then they backpedaled a little and said, okay, we're going to let you make the choice on it. But they did say, unfortunately, it's already been defaulted on all your videos. So if you want to, you can go back and undefault it, or you can change the default going forward. So I changed the default going forward, and I went back and I undefaulted about 100. The problem is I have over 1,000 videos, and it takes a minute or two to do each video, and it's click, 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 and every click you're waiting for the thing to reload and refresh. It's a pain in the rear. So every now and then I get a note that says, hey, Steve, I hit a mid-roll ad on your video such and such. I go in and I undo it. But there's going to be some out there. But on any video that I posted starting basically August 1st going forward, I don't have any of them. And I won't. They annoy me. So if they annoy me, I know they'd annoy you. JP says, we had a hockey team in Colombia called the Inferno. The guys that often go to local bars and we buy them drinks because they didn't make that much money. Yeah, the guys in the lower leagues don't make a lot of money. They're playing for the love of the game and also hoping they can move up in the world of hockey. And it's a grind because it's such a physical game. One of the guys that I was talking to said he had his nose broken last season, and to him it's like, I broke my nose. And to most people, getting your nose broken is like, something that, it's a big deal. Canadian Robot Lady, if you ever decide to have a lending library, can we expect it to be Leto's library? That would make sense due to the alliteration of the L, So that's pretty good. We would need a logo. Yeah, I'd have my friend design the logo and instead of the microphone, we just have a book or something. Is the audio off track? If it is, I apologize. There's not much I can do about that. Dr. Kaufman, what's the story on the license plate? FIN 073 is a replica license plate designed to look kind of like the European issued license plate from Finland. And a viewer of the show just ordered it for me, and he put FIN on there as a nod to Finland. And the 073 is actually a shout out to the Italian Hall. There were 73 people who died at the Italian Hall in 1913. Most of them were Finns. So he said that FIN is obvious, but as for a number, the only number he could think of that was relevant for what I talk about was 73. So I appreciate that. DJ AM says, I have ad blocker. I never see any ads on my video. Got no idea what we're talking about, right? Mark Heil says, I reloaded the browser and fixed the audio. That could be. So it might be, and again, I don't know enough about how browsers and computers and all this stuff works, but it has possibly something to do with the cache and the memory and the RAM and the way that your computer stores information and then interacts with a page, because obviously this image, this information is changing constantly. I don't know. I'm making stuff up here. Tom, is this a holiday? Only 200 people online. My Sunday live streams have been lower numbers ever since COVID. I don't mind. People watch these later, believe it or not. But also, I suspect it has a lot to do with the weather. So it's a beautiful, beautiful day out. You can obviously go outside and not sit in front of a computer for an hour and a half to hear some guy who's drinking Gatorade. I was always kind of hoping that if I stopped talking, maybe it would help the audio catch back up, because there's nothing on the audio channel, but I don't think that's how it works. Cyberdoc says people actually reading is an incredible thing to witness in this day and age. That's absolutely true. I have a Kindle, by the way, and I've got Kindle on my phone, and many of my books are available in Kindle. I don't like reading Kindle. I mean, I've gone on vacation before and brought a Kindle and I had like 20 books on it. And I wouldn't have wanted to carry 20 books on vacation. But if I'm sitting in my house reading a book, I'd rather have the paper book. I just would. It's easier on my eyes. It's easier on my brain. It just is. I like it. So Matthew Shostrom, Steve, give us a random interesting history fact from pre-1800s. That's a tough one, especially if you want me to give you a year on that, because my general focus of history is mostly the 20th century, and America is a relatively new country on the earth. And so, like, Michigan only became a state in the 1830s. So I don't actually have anything that pops into my head from prior to that. So I actually had somebody ask me the other day, they go, do you have any movies you like? I said, yes. Can you be more specific, please? Oh, boy. Daniel Kester, I have to do audiobooks now. Hard to read, most print. No, actually, and by the way, audiobooks would be great. Like, for instance, like if you're like exercising, right? Some things are easier to listen to. Unfortunately, most of my books are not available as audiobooks. My book, American Murder Houses, was put out in audiobook. And to me, it's hilarious because the guy who reads it has got the voice of God. And when I read my own books, I've got to, do the thing with my finger and read out loud. When I hear this guy reading my book, I'm like, wow, that sounds good. So it's funny. Nikki Tapavada says, why is that karma plate not on the Viper? Is that one behind you only a replica? And Nikki, I have to ask, I assume you're Finnish with that last name, and you use the umlauts over the A's, so I assume that you also speak and read Finnish. I appreciate that. But yes, people have asked me, they said, Steve, if you've got the plate, why isn't it on your car? And it is. I have two. In Michigan, we're only required to have one license plate on our car that goes on the back. But when you're ordering the plate, you can check a box, pay an extra $10, and then you can get an extra plate to do whatever you want with. So I thought, well, I'll pay the $10, and that'll give me a great thing that I can put on the. Is that working or not? Anyways, it's crystal clear here. Not so much there. But I struggled because of the umlauts, and I was concerned because, in America, umlauts are basically a punctuation mark. But in Finnish, an A with an umlaut is a different letter than the letter A. And so I actually consulted several of my Finnish-speaking friends and said, if I go with Kaarme versus K, A with an umlaut, RME, is that going to be so far off that it'll be like a completely misspelled word? And all my Finnish friends said, no. They understand that other languages don't use the same alphabet. And they said that any Finn who looks at that would immediately go, yep, snake. So that was the joke. And as I've said before, It's a joke that only like 3 or 4 people will get, but to them, it'll be really funny. Duncan Campbell says, hey, here's a history fact from Wikipedia. On this day, August 9th, but a long time ago, construction of the Tower of Pisa started, and that, of course, would be the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I suspect it was not yet called the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I wonder when it was. The guys are building it like this, and they go, hey, do you think we should like go that? No. Justin, it looks good this way. It'll become a tourist attraction. Who else is going to come to Pisa except to look at the Leaning Tower? Mark Heil's got to run. Hey, Mark, thanks for checking in. I appreciate it. I know you're on the West Coast. Mark's over there along the beach communities south of Los Angeles. And that is a beautiful area. I went to law school in LA, used to hang out down at Manhattan Beach, was my favorite, but all of them up and down that beach. Hermosa, Huntington, Redondo, beautiful, beautiful part of the world. JP says that's unusual. In South Carolina, they want all tags that are not mounted back to the DMV. Well, but remember that we also have got to get the sticker in the corner to make it official. There's no sticker on that. So there'd be a sticker in the corner, and the one of my cars got the sticker. A lot of people in Michigan will put a different plate on the front of their car. It's usually a historic plate or like a comedy plate, like Elvis 1 or something. And so they don't care about the plate on the front, but the plate on the back has got to be real. But like I got this plate to replace just a standard plate. And they don't want it back. They just, chuck it. I mean, I can't use it. So right now it's sitting in my garage. If I ever need a piece of tin about that big, I got one. So NIMBY Sepp says the tower did start to lean during construction. You got to give them credit then for finishing it. And it's still standing after all these years. So now JP says in South Carolina, they do stickers also. So the question is, they actually expect you to return return the plates? I guess. They don't trust you to destroy them or... And Matthew Shostrom says today is National Book Day in the U.S. Doesn't surprise me. Every day is something in America. Hey, it's National Chocolate Chip Day. Hey, it's National Take Your Painted Turtle Swimming Day. Mike Geert says I could put the Karma plate on the two-door Explorer. I could put it on the front, absolutely. In fact, I bought that Explorer from a guy who lived in Florida, and it had a front license plate frame on it. I took the frame off, though. So now there's this actual spot where there's no sun damage. Like the rest of the bumper's faded, and there's this tan line spot where the plate was. But I could put it on the front of that if I wanted to. But it wouldn't make any sense to put the word finish, the finish word for snake. Jason Johnson says the front plate doesn't need a tag. No, we don't need a front plate. There is no front plate in Michigan. In Michigan, they only give you one plate. So Daniel Kester, the Tower of Pisa took 300 years to complete. I seem to recall that. Took some time to complete. Amateur Shooter, is that Ben in the Leto mug? No. Have you guys not really spotted Ben yet? I moved Ben after the thumbnail. I originally had him over here by the license plates, and I moved him, and he's a little harder to spot today. So we'll see. Oh, could I please tilt the bills? Well, actually, the problem with the bills right now is that this one's in a plastic folder. So I'll just do this for now. I've really got to spend more time on the set and play with the lighting because there are some weird glares and shines and stuff. Bob Loblaw says tan marks are sexy. Yeah, especially on the front of a 2002 Ford Explorer. The chicks dig them. Oh, boy. Mike Geertz, I forgot about the viper as a snake, too. It's kind of funny because so many people just assumed I meant that I'm a snake. Like, I'm a lawyer, I'm a snake. And I'm like, a viper is also a snake, and the car is a viper. And I'm like, oh. So apparently there was a chocolate chip day recently. Daniel Kester, where's the fun meter? The fun meter's offset. It rolled offset. It's literally like 6 inches that way. I'm going to do a massive overhaul. I had an idea occur to me yesterday, and I'm going to be able to rearrange a whole bunch of stuff in here, and it's going to look good. It won't. Yeah, Mike, that's the whole point. It's both. It won't solve all the problems of clutter, but what's really funny, and you know, there's 200 people in the room right now, okay? And the 200 people in the room right now, you know, Matthew, Dixie, Daniel, Mike, Steve, these are all names I see, JP, you know, Fuse Man. So we're all friends here. And you guys probably notice something new is on the set. Hey, that license plate's fairly new. Or hey, that K-Rock sticker's fairly new. Or whatever, you know, stuff shows up. The jaw harp showed up, you know. Once in a while, someone who's never seen my videos, never heard of me before, has no idea who I am, watches the video and goes, dude, what's with all that stuff behind you? It's kind of like, I haven't got time to explain it. I really don't. Dwayne Buck, will it drive your OCD viewers nuts if you straighten out the background? Well, believe it or not, it's going to unclutter it quite a bit. And I think uncluttering should help with the OCD. But then again, I'm not a psychiatrist. So Tom, the other day on a vid, you said you left something at home. I always assumed this was your home. Am I wrong? This is my studio. I actually live someplace else. But I have to remember to bring things to the studio. If I forget to bring them, I'll bring it next time. So, MB, I've only missed one live stream and watched the rerun. He's addicted to the show. I appreciate that. Daniel Quester, I asked that question when you only had your law books behind you. Oh, you know, it's funny because I've had people say that. You know, they watched the earliest videos. In the earliest video, I only had the one bookcase, did not have these bookcases. I had no OED. And all I had in the bookcase was the blue books here, regular books here, and a couple mugs up here. That's all I had. I did have the microphones, and I had the cars. And then what happened was I started getting stuff sent to me. I needed room for stuff. I got the OED from Kevin and his wife, and then I had bookshelves made for them. And of course, that made more space. So it's all in process. What can I tell you? Is Ben between the books above the Blue Viper? No. Do you play any video games, Dr. Kaufman? Not really, no. Although I am toying with the idea about buying an upright Defender console from back in the early 80s. I'm not sure I can justify spending that much money on a toy at this point in my life, but I think I will. NimbySep, I'm sub, but never get notifications when you go live. I keep hearing stories about people who don't get notifications, so I don't know what to tell you. I try to set the page up as close to an hour before it goes live as I can, because I know that the longer it's up, the more notifications that people get. But I don't know what to tell you other than that. I put it up, and it's supposed to send a notification saying, hey, there's a live stream coming up. So I don't know what to do. Yeah, can you imagine if I was trying to hide Ben and I didn't have all this camouflage? So that's Adrian Davis pointing that out. David Beeler, why do all my friends have Chryslers as collector cars but don't have Chryslers as everyday drivers? That's why, the obvious reason. The modern Chryslers are not as dependable as the old ones. And the old ones might not even have been that dependable either, but they were cool cars. So I had a 69 Dodge Charger in high school. I've got a 99 Viper right now. But if you said, Steve, you've got to drive a modern Chrysler, I'd be kind of like, because I've had so many clients with electrical problems and transmission problems. So, but that's just me. But it's an interesting question. Chrysler's changed owners several times. Don't forget, it's not even Chrysler anymore. It's Chrysler, and then they're owned by that weird investment group. And then they got bought by Fiat, and now they're Stellaris or something. Or I don't know. And so you have no idea. Is this off-centered? Close enough. And so all kinds of crazy stuff has happened since then. So Mike Gears, Cerberus. Yeah, it's really funny. Cerberus is like the three-headed dog that guards the gate of Hades in some mythology. And it was the name of an investment group. And all I remember is three-headed dog. I can never remember Cerberus. Carl Lind, is Benji a bookmark in Wicked Sister? No. See, this is one that J. Paul would spot. I don't think he's in the room, though, because that guy can spot anything. And it's on the set. I can see it. But it's on edge. So Matthew says it was in Greek mythology that we had the Cerberus, the three-headed dog. Yeah. Tom says, between your books, cars, historical items, metal detect findings, and everything you get sent to you, you're not far off from being able to open up your own museum. I feel bad because I got so much cool stuff. I want to have it all on display, and I can't. I wish I could. I should almost just do like a video tour of everything somehow, and then maybe stick it at the end of a video or something to say, by the way, if you want to see it all, go to the end. So, Dixie Champagne says, is it pronounced karma? It's actually pronounced karma. You have to hit the A's kind of hard, and you roll the R slightly. Karma. So, I don't speak Finnish. MB says, Steve, why do we park in a driveway and drive on a parkway? Why is it a pair of pants? These are the mind benders no one knows the answers to. JP says I could rotate the set the way I rotate my t-shirts. Actually, I probably could, but that'd be a lot of work. Because remember, the t-shirts are on a rack. I can slide them, which is what I literally do. I can't slide the car or stuff will get knocked all over. So Josh Blotzer says, is the bend behind the number 24 car? No, but you're getting closer. Daniel Kester, is your former room that you used for this stuff still cluttered? No, because I took all this stuff out of it and put it here, and now it's empty. Oh, boy. Tim Lafreniere, what are one of your top 10 collectibles? I've got some cool stuff. Most of it just has sentimental value. And I'm not sure. It depends on whether are you talking about value to me or value on the open market. Because, like, for instance, I've got the chair here from the Italian Hall, and I wouldn't sell that for anything. It's not for sale. It never will be for sale. And it's a chair that was in the hall, most likely, the night of the Italian Hall disaster. So chair's over 100 years old, and it was present at an event that I wrote a book about. So that's a very, very cool thing to own. On the other hand, I did a video once and I was talking about something, and I saw the thumbnail the other day, and I'm holding a little tiny bear, a metal bear, and he's holding a Finnish flag. And the bear was the mascot of the 1940 Olympics, which were to be held in Finland, which they were not because of the war. And so they actually started making the swag for the Olympics, and then they canceled the Olympics, and the stuff just disappeared. And I was on eBay one day, and a guy goes, I've got this little bear mascot from the 1940 Olympics with a flag. And I bought it. I've never seen another one like it. And I think it's really cool. It's just a really cool thing to have. So I've got some cool stuff like that, but I not terribly expensive or valuable in that sense. They're just cool things to have, so what can I tell you? Amateur shooter, tell them about the Civil War buckle. I did an entire video on that. The video I did when I broke 100,000 subscribers is called the $16,000 belt buckle. And I found a belt buckle while metal detecting that turned out to be an actual Confederate Civil War belt buckle. That was real. And a dealer bought it from me. And he actually offered to sell it for me. And he goes, I can sell it for $20,000, in which case I would get a commission, or I would buy it from you today for $16,000. I'll cut you a check. I said, Steve Leto with a V. So obviously the best thing I ever found. I don't still have it though. And I've had people say, Steve, wait a second. You save everything you find with your metal detector, but you sold that. And I said, something? A couple things. I saved the coins, but I'm not going to wear the buckle. And I hate to say this, but it's a Confederate buckle, which is what made it very, very rare. But, and so who knows? These markets go up and down. It might be 5 years from now, nobody wants a thing. So it was a heck of a lot more than I thought it was worth. It paid for my metal detector over 10 times over. And so I did it, sold it, and I'm not sorry. So there you go. G Keyman 565 says, you need a Steve's studio cam. I would, but I hate to ruin the illusion, because you'd actually see that I got a light here, and I got a light here, got another light here, got a light here, and you also, you think that's a mess? From here forward, it's a mess. So Andrew Allen, 16K is a lot of money. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The Fuse Man says you could at least do one 260-degree pan shot. I mean, meant 360. I got you, though. The only interesting thing in this room, and I've said this before, is the T-shirt collection. And I've shown that before. Pretty sure I have. Because directly behind me, right back there, let's see if I can do this without putting too much glare on it. There we go. That's the two racks, and they're not full. I just started setting them up, but 2 full racks of T-shirts. And I posted the photograph, I think, inside a video one time, and somebody counted them. And there was over 100. I know that I hang all my T-shirts inside out on wooden hangers. And so I've ordered those hangers from Amazon, and I've had to order them 4 or 5 times, meaning that 25, 25, 25, 25. And that's along with all the hangers I already had. So I know that there's right there, and that's only the ones I currently have here. There are a bunch of shirts I retired because I'd worn them on camera so many times. So the Fuse Man, and they get washed in cold water. Absolutely. Here's the thing. My T-shirts have got the easiest life on earth. Think about this. Someone mails me a T-shirt. I break it out, throw it in the laundry, wash it in cold water, hang it on a hanger, and I wear it on camera for 10 minutes. Hang it back up, turned inside out on a wooden hanger. It works its way down the rack in the back of the room. And, I don't know, 30, 40 days later, it gets back into the rotation maybe. Turn it right side out, put it back on, wear it for 10 minutes, take it back off, back on the hanger, back on the rack. It cycles through 2 or 3 times, and after it's been worn for a grand total of maybe half an hour, into the wash. So it's like they've been put out to pasture almost, although they do get screen times. That's good. Oh boy. Living soul, quickening spirit. Can metal detectors detect meteorites? Yes, the ones that have metallic content in them. I'm not a geologist, nor am I a chemist, but my understanding is that a lot of meteorites contain a lot of metals, like nickel, I think, and a few others, maybe even iron. And I know that in metal detecting terminology, they often refer to those as hot rocks, the rocks that contain that kind of stuff, because the rocks will cause a detector to get a signal. It's just a question whether you want to find those or not. So guys, there are guys out there who specifically go detecting, looking for meteorites. And a lot of times what they're doing is they're going places where they know that a meteorite hit, and they're looking, and I've seen this TV shows about it. I've seen in a museum where they've got a meteorite on display. And so I know, and they're also worth a lot of money. But of course, they're not easy to find. It's one of the reasons they're worth a lot of money. DJ AM says, when I grew up, there was someone with the exact name and birth date as me. I lived in Clinton Township. He lived in Mount Clemens. Yeah, I did the video this morning about the Steve Latos out there. And the guy I mentioned had my same first, middle, and last name. First name spelled with a V. He lived near me, and he had a criminal record, yay long. And but luckily, it never caused any problems. So Wild Bill 57 says iron, nickel, and iridium. Iridium being the unusual in there. So Amateur Shooter says, okay, I give up. Show us Ben before you sign off. No one's found Ben? The second I show you, you're going to go like, wait, really? Right there. I've put Ben there before. Must just be the angle or the light or something. Adrian Davis, I know many metalheads whose t-shirt collections make yours look tiny. Closets filled to the brim with folded shirts. No, I agree. I used to have a lot of shirts too, but I got a lot now. Nimrod Diaries, can you metal detect in Michigan State game areas? Not finding info on the DNR website. I don't know. You'd have to find out. You have to ask around. Generally speaking, if it's not forbidden, it's allowed. But you'd have to check. There are rules on metal detecting. Most state parks in Michigan don't allow it except in certain areas. They'll say it's not allowed, but you can, like on the beach, for instance, or in the water. So you have to find out. But I'm not sure about game areas. It's like national forests versus national parks versus state forests versus state parks. So Dixie Champagne says, I love Lato and Wright. Lato and Wright, of course, is a duo out of Minnesota where the first guy's name is actual Steve Lato. No relation, as far as I know. Peter Mandick says it was the white glare from the decal that made it tough. Well, the glare off the ABX or the glare off the 71 Daytona. So Bit9K says, I had it there during a live stream recently. I might have. Unfortunately, I've run out of so many creative places to put it, So the other day I stuck it like behind this license plate up near the top. I've also found out if I put it backwards, it looks different because the back of it looks different than the front. And your eye is looking for the front of a bill, not the back of a bill. So it helps. So, Mike Garrett's, the Bureau of Land Management owns a lot of forest land too. Do they own it or do they control it or do they manage it? I'm curious. I've never understood the overlapping jurisdictions of the BLM versus the National Park Service and so on. 108 GK, it's burger time. Checking out to chow down, have fun. Thank you. Glad you were here for when you were. Peter Mandix is the glare off the Daytona. Don't know if that helps or not. David P. I've never lived in Virginia. The license plate was donated to me by a viewer. I did a video that'll go up tomorrow morning because it's actually a commemorative plate. It's a sample. It's not a real plate. And it says, remember the USS Cole. The USS Cole, that's the ship that was attacked by terrorists almost 20 years ago now. So Matthew Shostrom, Steve, I'm waiting for the day you take the Hundo entirely off the set. Yeah, I don't know if I can, unfortunately, because I made the promise. The question I can tell you is this. I mentioned a while back that I have mugs, Leto's Law mugs, and Leto's Law t-shirts, and they're available on Zazzle. And I sold enough stuff to get to $98. And I told Zazzle, as soon as it hits 100, send me the money. I also promised that as soon as it hit 100, I would take the money and donate it to charity. Yeah, I've been stalled at $98 for over a month now. So if anybody orders anything off of Zazzle in the near future, you'll bump me over $100. And then as soon as it happens and I get the check, I'm going to come on here, we'll discuss, and we'll try to come to some kind of consensus as to who to give the money to. I'm not going to give it to the audience because to me, I can't do that. I don't want to turn this into a game show. But I'd like to donate it to a good cause, and I know that there's people in the audience who know about good causes. So we'll give the money away. I got some grief. People saying, "Hey, Steve, what's with the t-shirts? You getting desperate?" Look, I make like $1 a shirt. Okay, I make $1 a mug. I'm not getting rich off of it. So what I'll do is I'll take the money that I got from it and give it away. So. But I'll do it. I'll do it for a good cause. And like I said, I've been stalled at like $98.53 for over a month. So, amateur shooter vets or animals? The veterinary clinic? And I missed a discussion about honey. Was somebody suggesting a honey taste-off? What's funny is I had one or two people who didn't quite get the joke, who were asking me, Steve, you conducted your taste test incorrectly. Of course I did. That's why it was funny. I ate like a pound of maple syrup live on camera. I almost got ill for like a day and a half. Oh, boy. Yeah, people are suggesting things like animal shelters, March of Dimes, Special Olympics, local food banks, pet shelters. I did a story the other day. In fact, it was this morning, the one about the guy named Leto who donated a bunch of backpacks to a veterans organization. You know, that kind of thing. You know, so we'll trust me. We'll do it at the time. It'll be timely. It'll make sense. So, Tiger Stripes. Hey, Steve. Hail, chat. Glad you checked in, but I got news for you. You got here at the tail end. Oh, boy. Dixie Champagne's got a jug of raspberry honey. It is good. By the way, I was up north a few weeks ago and I bought some thimbleberry jam from the monks at the Jam Pot. That stuff's good. Thimbleberry jam. If you know what I'm talking about someday, hopefully you'll figure it out. G Keyman 565 says, maybe you could also match the donation. Maybe I could. Now you're giving away my money. Hey, why don't the two of you fight? Oh, Andre Ancina, if God forbid you had to buy a Toyota, which one would you buy? It's not that I have anything against Toyotas, but I'm just not aware of any Toyotas right now. I don't know, a truck. I'm not even sure what the model names are. So, Andrew Allen, check on Johnny. I will. Nimby Sepp, homeless veterans. Yeah, that's the guy who's donating the backpacks for homeless veterans, which is obviously a great cause. So there you go. Amateur shooter, the MR2, a little Toyota that they made back in the day. Don Jackson, besides Michigan and California, what other states have you lived in? The bulk of my life I've spent in Michigan. I consider my time elsewhere to have been wasted. Oh, by the way, how's the temperature in the Sunroom? It's 79 degrees right now, but I'll tell you, I had the AC turned on this morning to get the temperature. I started at 70. It was 70 degrees out when I started. 70 degrees in here when I started, and then what happened was, the temperature outside has gotten 87 degrees. I just checked. And then on top of that, these lights, believe it or not, actually do add some heat. They bring the heat. So Peter Mannix says, I've had two buddies that had their rusty Tacoma frames replaced. And that's a weird situation. I don't have a whole lot of time to get into it, but there was a problem with frames on some of those Tacomas where the frames rusted prematurely, and that's a safety issue. And so they actually did a recall on them, and there's a gray area where they'd tell you your claim was denied, but if you made a big enough stink, they'd take care of you. And a very good friend of mine who owned a store up north in the UP of Michigan contacted me and said, Steve, I bought one of these trucks. It's got this rusty frame issue, and they won't help me. And so I said, okay. And I don't normally get involved in used car cases. It's not a lemon law case, no lawsuit. I said, here's what I'll do for you. I go, let me write a letter on your behalf. And I sent a letter to Toyota on her behalf. And she called me a week or two later. She goes, thank you. And I go, for what? She goes, oh, they agreed to replace the frame on my truck. So that was a few years ago, but they took care of some people. But not everyone. Matthew Shostrom gets in the last question today because I'm going to wrap it up. We're past 2:30. He says, Steve, are you going to get your $12 from Google about the class action? I might, just to do it, just so I can say that, what the process was like and do a video on it down the road. And if I do, I might give it away also. Mr. Ars has just bought me a Leto's Law mug. Thank you very much. That might put me over. I hope it does. And if it does, next week, we will come back and we'll discuss how to spend the $101 or whatever it turns out to be. But I got to wrap it up. I'll talk to you guys next week and, of course, all week long through videos. Until then, you behave yourself. Bye-bye.